Hello, guys. Happy Monday. I am so sorry to be a few minutes late. YouTube was just giving me 19 levels of problems where I couldn't get into the studio for the stream, and I couldn't get. It was just we had some technical difficulties. We're going to blame it on Mercury retrograde, and that's the position that I'm going to take for today on that because it is sadly Mercury retrograde. Don't sign any contracts. Your technology will always screw up, and be careful where you're driving because people are horrible drivers during Mercury retrograde. We don't want to mess with any of that nonsense. Guys, welcome to the stream. Now, I did actually for today's stream give people the opportunity to vote on what we're going to watch. And, it's funny because I put the polls up. Well, I put the polls up in my locals, and then the intrepid volunteers running the Actively Unwoke Twitter account put up a poll on Twitter because, of course, I'm not running the Actively Unwoke Twitter account. I'm definitely not writing it. I am permanently banned on Twitter for sharing government email addresses. And so obviously I'm not running it, but I did have some intrepid volunteers put that up. And it was actually really interesting. I gave people the option of 4 different things to watch. I said we can do a school investigation. We can watch a socialist anti-racist training. We can watch a socialist education training, or we can watch a better socialist anti-fascist organizing training that I found earlier. And then the one we watched on Saturday. The one we watched on Saturday was okay, but it wasn't as socialist as I wanted it to be. Anyway, so I gave people 4 options, and the votes were completely different on the 2 different platforms. So in locals, people really wanted to do a school investigation, and of course, you guys know I'm always up for that. On Twitter, I think they wanted to watch an anti-racism training, which was the lowest vote getter in my locals. And I was like, what's a girl to do? So I decided to split the difference. And today we will be watching, and I'm actually kind of glad this worked out. This could actually be good this could actually hit all the marks. We're going to be watching this presentation from the old standby, Haymarket Books, the most socialist of all socialist publishing platforms that I've found so far anyway. And we are going to be watching this presentation that they streamed. When did they stream this? Let's see. October 20th, 2020. So let's keep that in mind. They streamed this before the presidential election in 2020. But I picked this one out because I just thought that this would actually probably be really insightful into where these people are going in regards to education. It's called Organizing for Educational Justice, Chicago Style: Ballots, Books, and Beyond. Now, of course, there are never any stolen elections ever. Every election is perfect. There's never any election fraud ever. I don't know why people would think such a thing, but if there were going to be election fraud, Chicago might be the place where that could take place. So I actually thought that it was really kind of edifying, I suppose, that they put that ballots was one of the way that they're going to achieve educational justice in Chicago. And so the description of this is: join Chicago education justice organizers for a conversation about winning Black liberation in our classrooms, our communities, and beyond. In recent years, Chicago area parents, teachers, and youth have built successful grassroots campaign to win reforms, challenge the priority of city officials, and capture local election offices. Educational justice and Black liberation cannot be made in the classroom alone, at the ballot box alone, or even in the streets alone. Join this conversation with Chicago area activists to learn more about how their work has unfolded. Now, the reason that I'm going to be doing a deep dive into many of these really overtly socialist presentations. And the reason I'm getting fascinated by this, and I'm sorry, like, if this is not your thing, maybe stick around a while. You'll learn to speak their language. But here's the thing. These people are winning. These people are winning. We watched a presentation just the other day of it was a roundtable that they put together about anti-fascist organizing in the era of Trump 2 days after Trump was elected to office in 2016. And guess what? 2 days after the election, everything that they talked about doing in that presentation, they did. And that was how they won. That was how they beat Trump. They started planning from the moment that Trump was announced the winner in 2016. They didn't even wait for him to get into office. and then they executed on their plans, and then they won. What I'm starting to figure out is when we're watching this overtly socialist content, they are telling us exactly what they're doing, guys. They're doing it right out in the open where we can all see it. They are giving us their entire effing playbook. They have complete hubris about it. And then they take the playbook that they give us and they go and implement the playbook, and then they win based on successfully implementing the playbook. And so, really, all we need to do in order to understand where these people are going and what they're doing and what their priorities are and how they're going to achieve their priorities, all we need to do is sit back and watch their content. That's it. How amazing is that? Now, the downside to this is we have to watch a lot of socialist content. We have to take the time to listen. We have to understand what they're saying. And that does take time. It takes time to sit back and watch this content. There is so much of this effing content on the internet, I can't even begin to tell you. I am completely convinced that if we find enough of this content, and I'm not talking about the progressive stuff, I'm not talking about like AOC and the CNN socialists, I'm not talking about that. These are the real socialists. These are the real far left, they're not even progressives. They don't like progressives. They don't think progressives go far enough. We need to find their content. Because ain't no one watching their content. There's content and presentations that like people like this have put on YouTube that have maybe 100 views, maybe a couple hundred views. They're telling us what they're doing, but no one is watching it and no one is listening. So we're going to start doing that. And I'm going to try to make it as bearable as possible. And listen, one of the reasons I do these streams is if I have to watch this content anyway, I might as well be surrounded by friends. We may as well go through this entire experience together. And I want to know their plans are. I want to know what they are. I want to know what their strategy is. I want to know what their thought process is, because if I know their plans and I know their thought process and I know their strategy, that's when we can start implementing tactics to beat them. But not before. Excuse me, guys, but not before. You cannot beat an enemy if you do not understand their tactics. You cannot beat an enemy if you do not understand their strategy. And one of the reasons that I think that the uber far left, the real socialists, have been so successful at shifting the Overton window, because they control where we go. They're controlling everything right now, guys. I have seen so many conservatives, people on the right, just dismiss these people. Oh, they're just crazy. Oh, I don't know how you sit there and watch it. They're just nuts. They have a mental disorder. Liberalism is a mental disorder. They're all mentally deranged. Oh my God, I don't even know why you're showing us this. Every single person who dismisses this type of content has not taken the time to understand that these people are driving the talking points of the Democratic Party and of the mainstream media, and that is how they are shifting the Overton window in their direction. The things that these people said this is a presentation from 2 years ago. 2 years ago. I'm going to bet my bottom dollar that the things that they say in this presentation have already made their way into classrooms, have already made their way into the talking points of the Democratic Party, have already made their way onto CNN. We need to watch this and we need to learn from them. And they are going to reveal all of their secrets to us if we just take the time to listen without dismissing them, without calling them insane, without insulting them. I don't think we need to do any of that. I don't think any of that serves us at all. We need to listen. The minute that you dismiss these people is the minute that you lose to them. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to lose. Exactly, bot. They're not insane. They're not insane. They know what they're doing. They're committed to what they're doing. They show up every single day and try to implement the strategies that they come up with and that they talk about. They don't do this infighting bullshit. These people hate the Democrats. These people hate the progressives. But they work with them anyway. They put on their big girl and boy pants and they work with them anyway because they know they have to. That's what they call solidarity. All right, guys, we're going to jump into this presentation. But before we do, I just want to say big shout out to my community of supporters last night. We had an amazing movie night last night in the supporter Discord. If you have not yet joined us for a movie night, we've done them the last 3 weeks. I think we're taking this weekend off. But we have done them the past 3 weeks, and they've just been great. Last night, we did a great movie night with Demolition Man. I think it was record-breaking attendance, and we had a great conversation, and it was really, really good. And so I want everyone to join us for movie night, and that's not movie night, that's something else. And the way that you get invited to movie night is a couple of different ways. You do have to be a supporter of my work because although I love all of my regular YouTube and Odyssey and Rockfin and Rumble support or subscribers, and if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing, turning on notifications, that sort of thing. Although I love you guys and you do make it possible for me to do what I'm doing, the real people who make it possible to do what I'm doing are my supporters in Patreon, on Locals, on Substack, things like that. So if you want to get involved and get access to my supporter Discord and join us, we have a community Zoom call coming up in about an hour and a half. We're going to have to speed through this presentation because we have a community Zoom call coming up at 7 p.m. Everyone will be invited to that community Zoom call, but you got to become a supporter. You do that by becoming a member, going to activelyounwoke.com/support. The link is down in the description below. You can join on Patreon for a monthly gift, anywhere from $5 a month all the way up to $250 a month, depending on what perks you want. You can get swag like stickers and t-shirts if you want to do that. Now, I personally like Patreon. I don't think I'm going to get canceled on Patreon. I don't. But I do understand that people have some reservations. Some people like it and some people do not like it. The reason I added Patreon is I wanted to be able to appeal more to non-conservative audiences because conservatives, let's be honest, are the main ones that have an issue with Patreon. And I do understand why they do. I don't like that Patreon has canceled people. I really don't. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But their website also works and has features that I like, and we're going to give it a try and we're going to see how it goes. But if you don't like being a member on Patreon, that's totally cool. You can join my locals community, kb.locals.com, and you can actually join my community for free. You don't even have to be a paying supporter. But if you want access to the supporter Discord, if you want access to the community Zoom calls that I do twice a week, you do have to become a paid supporter by going to kb.locals.com/support, and you can sign up for $5 a month or for $50 for the year, or you can make a one-time gift, whatever's clever. You can also become a supporter on Substack. All of my Substack articles are free. I don't charge for any of them. However, if you want access to the special perks, you can become a paid subscriber on both my Actively Unwoke Substack or my Red Pill Diary Substack. Whatever's clever for you, you can find all the links you want over at activelyounwoke.com/support. And if you really want extra bonus points for a limited time only, you can become a supporter of my Schools Exposed campaign to train 10,000 parents how to find out what the schools are teaching their kids using publicly available information. We have actually already met the fundraising goal that I set of $10,000. So now, like, extra overages go to the marketing budget because I really do want a marketing budget for this program. I am fully committed to running 10,000 parents through this program, but I am realistic about it. I think it's going to take a couple years. I do. What this is for is to fund the development of the program and to fund the technology that is required to deliver the program on a private training platform that I already have a couple different options for. So just in case one goes down, I do actually have another as a backup. And so that's what this is for. I'm going to develop this program. I'm going to launch it in January of 2023, and I'm going to train 10,000 parents how to use the information that's already out there all over the internet, as well as FOIA requests, public records requests, to find out what the schools are teaching their kids and to be able to arm themselves with information so that they can fight back in their local communities. There are all sorts of different perks that you can get as a part of this, to include $50 early access to the program if you want to be one of the first people to run through it. If you want a signed copy of my book, you can get it through that. And at the $1,000 level, I will even knit you a hand knit shawl. I'm working on a new one right now. Look at, is that pretty? I love the blue and the yellow kind of mix. That's probably my favorite section so far. I also do love this pink though. It's like a hot pink. on like a dark background. Anyway, I will custom knit you a hand knit shawl. We will work together to pick out the yarns. I will make sure it's good stuff, not the or acrylic Michael stuff, the good stuff. Okay, we'll pick out your colors, we'll pick out the pattern together, and I will knit you a hand knit creation that is just for you, and that is for a $1,000 gift to my Indiegogo campaign to train 10,000 parents how to find out what the schools are teaching, and all of these different options will get you into my community and my supporter Zoom and all that. Yes, Deborah, we can do wool, we can do alpaca, we can do linen, we can do cotton, we can even do cashmere, we can even do silk. You can knit with all sorts of things, and we'll pick that out together when the time comes. I also just want to let you guys know that, and this is what I was pulling up earlier, I am starting another round of the Actively Unwoke Book Club this coming weekend. If you would like to join, you just need to head over to activelyunwoke.com/book club. It's totally free. It's totally free to join. The only requirement is that you need to have purchased a copy of my book, because this is a book club to discuss the book. You can get it in hardcover, you can get it in Kindle, you can get it in audio. You still have plenty of time to get your copy of the book and to at least read the first section, because this is a 3-part book club. So you only need to read the first section for the first part on Saturday. And let's be honest, even if you don't read it all, you can still come anyway and talk to us and ask questions and that sort of thing. But if you want to sign up for the book club, activelyunwoke.com/book club, and you'll have the steps. Basically, all you do is fill out a form and you upload your receipt of purchase, and then you're going to be in, and I will be emailing out more information soon. So head over there for that. Deborah, I love alpaca too. Alpaca is super soft. I actually was almost knitting with some alpaca yarn earlier. So no, I love alpaca, and that is definitely an option if you get that shawl. All right, guys, let's dig into it. We got to maybe go a little bit fast today, but that's all right. Mount that like button for me if you have not already. And let's listen to what the socialists want to do to change education in our lifetimes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Jones, Associate Director of Education at the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture. And I'm thrilled to welcome you to this event produced by Haymarket Books, co-sponsored by the Schomburg Center and the Abolitionist Teaching Network. Tonight, our topic is...
Anytime you hear abolition, you need to think communism. Anytime you hear the word liberation, you need to think communism. If you don't understand their language off the bat, don't worry, just stick with it. But those are what those words mean. I'm going to speed this up just to 1.25 playback, so a little bit faster, but not a lot faster.
Organizing for Educational Justice, Chicago style. Ballots, books, and beyond. We're going to look at dynamic developments in grassroots activism in schools and classrooms and outside of them. What parents, teachers, and students who are not in Chicago can learn from Chicago. Shouldering the heavy load of repping Chicago tonight are 3 fabulous speakers. Caleb Ottman, creative director and producer, educator, writer, scholar, community organizer,
and mask wearer, Zoom mask wearer.
Stacey Davis Gates, the current vice president of the Chicago Teachers Union. Welcome.
Teachers Union.
Dave Stovall, professor in the Department of Black Studies and the Department of Criminology, Law, and Justice at University of Illinois at Chicago. And co-hosting this discussion with me is the always brilliant Bettina Love.
Bettina Love is
insane. And Athletic Association endowed professor at the University of Georgia. Welcome, everybody, and welcome, Bettina.
Thank you so much, Brian. It is wonderful to be with you all. Thank you all at home who are joining us. We know that these are trying times. We're in a pandemic. But what we also know is that when this pandemic is over, whenever this pandemic is over, there has to be a future for us, a Black future for us, a Latinx future for us, a future built on justice. And so tonight, what we want to do is think about what that future looks like and use Chicago as a model for those strategies, approaches, and wins. How do we fight for educational justice? How do we fight for justice in ways in which that matter to our communities? So tonight, we are so delighted to have 3 amazing Chicago.
Did it just get really loud and echoey for anyone else?
Who do this work in food and who do this work for us. And we hope that you take the strategies that you learned tonight and apply them to your own communities to disrupt, to abolish, and to fight wherever you are. And so I think we should get started. We got some great questions. Do you know anything about Brian Jones?
Oh, there it goes back. Okay, that's better.
He's the question man. He gets it going. So I'm also just very honored to be with you tonight, Brian, and co-hosting with you. Abolitionist Teaching Network is so honored to be in this space with Schomburg and Haymarket Books. So the first question will always go to the youth. Caleb, we're so excited to have you. So please, if you could just get us started telling us about who you are, the work that you do, and how did you get involved in this work, particularly as such a young person?
Word. Thank you all for having me. Thank you to Haymarket for inviting me. It's an honor to be on this panel with such dope folk. My name is Caleb Altman. I am an organizer based out of the west side of Chicago, born and raised. I am a student and a scholar. I am a baby of the movement for Black Lives. It literally birthed me in my political consciousness. So I started organizing back in 2014. I was 12 years old, and this was during the first iteration of the Black Lives Matter campaign or movement, and it was when this movement was called terrorist organization. It was called something that would just be a moment. It was called too radical and too.
And now it's called indicted, isn't it, Caleb?
Now
it's called indicted.
We've learned that that's not the case, and that the Black Lives Matter movement has really channeled the demands of young people and young people of color and young Black people and young queer Black women in particular all across the country. So I started this work through that, getting involved with Village Leadership Academy. I'm a graduate there, where it's a social justice-based school in Chicago where the foundation is Black consciousness, social justice, liberation theory and praxis, and grassroots campaigns. So yeah, that's how I started this work.
Thank you so much, Caleb. Stacey?
Hey, thank you for having me. Very glad to be here. This is a dope panel. I don't know, I kind of got pushed into this, right? I'm a high school history teacher, and just wanted to make the world a little better by, providing some history, some world history to students in CPS. And Arnie Duncan came through and shut us down. And I never felt such dissonance from what I was hearing and from what I was experiencing, and couldn't settle that. And I eventually found others who were having a very similar experience because they were shutting us down, school communities across Chicago. And we started to, believe that we could actually throw some elbows.
She's got good hair.
Union, so the union could do that work because it was institutional, and school communities should be protected. And here we are.
What this is telling us is that the teachers union in Chicago is not just extremely left, which is most teachers unions are extremely left, but the teachers union in Chicago is legitimately socialist, which doesn't surprise me at all. The teacher licensure requirements in Chicago are some of the most woke of any state that I've seen. So that really doesn't surprise me, but let's just keep that in mind. We're talking about legitimate socialists running the teachers unions. That's crazy.
Some years later, fighting for it with our union, redefining actually what union is and who union is.
We should always
in
be
Chicago.
Redefining what union is.
We believe our members are also the community. We believe our members are also our students and their families. And we have been expanding the definition of bargaining to include the common good, because we're common good practitioners.
Oh, thank you so much for that. I mean, I was so inspired the last strike you all had, and parents were like, strike.
So
go ahead, do it. I mean, that support just inspired me.
Just as a reminder, and this happened after this was recorded, the teachers union in Chicago was the one where the head of the teachers union was protesting schools opening again in person because she was on vacation in Puerto Rico. And she literally zoomed into the meeting to protest the schools opening again, saying it's too dangerous for us to leave our houses. It's too dangerous to go to side. She was on vacation in Puerto Rico. That's the Chicago Teachers Union. That's who we're talking about.
So many different ways, and made me think very differently about unions as someone's from New York. Thank you so much for that. My brother from another mother. What's up, Dave? Tell us, how did you get started? How did you start doing this work? How did we get Dave Stovall?
Man, thank y'all so much for having me. It's so good to see folks and be in y'all company, and to everybody watching, I hope your families are safe. Well, I got started. I always give credit to my grandmother and parents for having just what my grandmother would refer to as Black books in the house, right? So literally just being able to look on the bookshelf and be like, oh, look, that's Blackness. What? Let's read that. And she had a book. My grandma had a book that was edited by Toni Morrison called The Black Book, right? So literally just looking at the Black book and really kind of making some connections. I didn't know it just yet, but then I really came to know it in high school by way of the homie Marcus Murray. And I always have to shout Marcus Murray and Courtney Smith out. Marcus Murray was my chemistry lab partner. And one day in chemistry, we were sitting down and we had our little book propped up, and he leaned over to me and he said, look, man, you know, there's some bullshit, right? And I was like, true, all right. So he said, look, this is what you need to be reading. So Murray gave me a copy of the selected speeches of Malcolm X. So I was reading Message to the Grassroots, Battle of the Bullet, the fight against white supremacy. So I'm reading all this and I'm just like, oh, okay, this is the connection to my grandmother's house, right? This is the connection to the crib. And then a year later, my homegirl Courtney was like, look, we need a Black studies class. It's a ton of Black students here. We ain't got nothing to talk about us.
Why do the subtitles look like...
We about to get a Black studies class. You like to run your mouth a lot. Come to the meeting.
Why do the subtitles look like they don't match what's being said? The subtitles are definitely a little off. I don't know what's going on. Let's turn them off and let's do what we always should do when technology is failing us and turn it off and turn it back on.
We finna make it happen. And I'm like, okay, word, all right. So I actually was part of developing a Black studies class at my high school that I was actually never allowed to take because I graduated. So it allowed me to see what it means to do work.
No, they're still off. It didn't work.
See, right? But will always be beneficial for folks. So that led me down a path. When I got to college, I actually, in addition to being in a bunch of fights when I got down to college, thinking I'm just trying to do Chicago stuff on white people's campus. So I go down there, I'm fighting, doing all types of stuff. But right before school started, I was on a protest on the president's lawn, right? Ironically,
I'm gonna try reloading. We're gonna try again. I believe in you, YouTube. Not really. That's all right.
Connection to the crib. And then a year later, my homegirl Courtney was like, look, we need a Black studies class, a ton of Black students here. We ain't got nothing to talk about us. Let's go to the principal.
Should I leave them on or turn them off? Let me know what you want.
Run your mouth a lot.
Because they don't match.
We finna make it happen. And I'm like, okay, word, all right.
I'm happy to leave them on if people want them on. I was
part of developing a Black studies class at my high school that I was actually never allowed to take because I graduated. So it allowed me to see what it means to do work that I may not see, right? But will always be beneficial for folks. So that led me down a path. When I got to college, I actually, in addition to being in a bunch of fights when I got down to college, thinking I'm just trying to do Chicago stuff on white people's campus. So I go down there, I'm fighting, doing all types of stuff. But right before school started, I was on a protest on the president's lawn, right? Ironically, with the creators of Caleb's school, right? So we all went to undergrad together, right? In terms of how that connection. So from that space, it allowed me to see from the block to my grandmother's house to college what these connections meant. And then always from there, I was looking for a space to try to make sense of what I saw to be happening and then join forces with the folks who were working to change the condition.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you for those stories. I just want to tell a quick story, which is that Bettina and I did an event together in June. And then we were trying to figure out, how do we follow up? How do we do something that, you know, will be useful?
I think we've watched the event they did in June.
Coming upon this election, we thought, you know what? This is a long struggle. It's not just about this election. It's about what people have been doing, what people are going to keep doing. And when we were throwing out names of people and things that we wanted to highlight, we kept coming back to Chicago.
Okay, probably aliens. Thank you. You don't need to keep chatting it in.
So
I appreciate it.
So
you don't need to keep chatting it in.
Wow, there's something really going on different layers and different levels of Chicago. There's the youth, there's the teachers. What's the, secret sauce, Will? What is going on? How do you explain the flowering of activism on many different layers right now in Chicago? I'll start with you, Stacey.
The pain and the oppression, I think, is what triggers it. I wish I could say that it was something about the hope and the joy. We find it, but I think it's about the pain and the oppression. My turn was about being told that I was a failure as an educator and that the school community that I was a part of also failed. But also I'm in a neighborhood with vacant lots. I'm in a neighborhood experiencing, high unemployment, double-digit unemployment levels. I'm in a neighborhood that has been clearly disinvested in generations, but they assign blame to the very thing that they have decided that we weren't going to fund, decided that we were not going to put investment and care and love and support and resources in. And so it wasn't because I wanted to just fight or just be obstinate, although my mother would say that that's just a kind of a part of my DNA. But it was the oppression, it was the pain, it was the backing into a corner. Politics, leadership in Chicago will push you into a corner, and you will have two choices. You can fold or you can fight. And I think that's where my interaction in this comes from.
And Caleb, how do you see it? How do you understand the strength of Chicago organizing right now?
I think it's the young people. I think it's the constant revamping of methodologies and practices and processes that just truly is inspiring as a young person to see some of the work that we were doing, we couldn't do, or we weren't able to do 4 years ago, is now being implemented by young folk who are 2 times younger, like, than the folks that were doing it in 2014. So like, that's really important. And I think that is just in our blood. When you trace the lineage of specifically Black people and working class people in Chicago, you see that lineage from the South, right? You see this escape of plunder and slavery and Jim Crow and theft to run to the North to be met by similar agents of violence. So through that, it's like, oh, we didn't leave the South.
We might want to have a conversation about who's doing violence in Chicago.
People's renewed vision for
how many people died in Chicago this past weekend? Anyone know offhand?
Folks say Sankofa, the going back and retrieving of what one has forgotten.
How many Black men died in Chicago this past weekend?
Young folks are committed to in the city.
How do you see it, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, in terms of what Stacey and Caleb said, I agree wholeheartedly. I would add women to that equation in terms of young folks, right? So really understanding the role of women historically in movement building, right? And then just returning, it's this moment, right? So Chicago has had these moments, right? If we go back to Ida B. Wells, right, in terms of doing her work here in Chicago, right? If we go back, look, Stacey, I'm gonna take it back. Let's go back to Lucy Parsons, right? We gotta say her name and really understand what that labor struggle really is, right? So Lucy Parsons led the Haymarket struggle, right? To where we first saw
this guy is a snake oil salesman. Snake oil salesman. He knows exactly what to say. He knows what lines to pull out. He's got some obscure references. He knows how to deliver it. I strongly doubt that this guy actually believes in much of anything other than what's going to make him relevant in the circle that he wants to be relevant in. He's a snake oil salesman. Watch.
Police organize itself in a city against
the benefit of snake oil salesmen, though. Let's not dismiss the value of snake oil salesmen. Oftentimes, they are not the brightest creatures in the box, not the brightest crayons in the box. It's just like it has to do with like the people that are inclined to be snake oil salesmen. They're usually not that bright, and so oftentimes these are the people. I bet you this guy is going to reveal a lot to us. He's gonna say a lot that means nothing. He's gonna say a lot of sound bites. He's gonna say a lot of like lines that he knows are gonna get him like accolades and stuff like that. But in the midst of it, he's going to reveal what they're actually doing, because he's not going to hold things back as much. He's too much of like, look at me, look at me, look at me. And Grandma Nay says 6 killed in Chicago this weekend in gun violence, 17s among 28 others wounded. Thank you, Grandma Nay. Yeah, these subtitles are all like on a completely different video. Oh, they're lagged. They look like they're on a different video. We'll see. Maybe the subtitles will fix themselves.
Working folks, right? So I think that continuation of that legacy, right? We got to talk about Harold Washington, right? And really understand what the organizing that was done to bring Harold Washington to the deck, right? Now, some of the audience might claim Obama, but Obama had to learn from Harold before he could get it right? Staying around, really putting that in context. And I think Chicago has always been immersed in a fight, right? You're going to fight to live, right? You're going to fight to make sure that folks get what they need. You're going to fight because it ain't coming from nowhere else, right? It is not coming if you are not willing to bang out for that thing that you need, right? And it's a way that people have, it's in our blood, it's in our spirit, because like Caleb said, when we were met with that kind of resistance by whites in Chicago, when we landed, we already said, we know what it is. So now that we know what it is, here's what we're going to do. And now we're at this moment where people have begun to rise up and connect to those histories that we now know to be real, and allowing us to think about our worlds differently. So I would definitely put that in the gaze of women and young folks who have been able to rise up historically. And now this is another moment that's a continuation of that history that we've had here.
Oh, Dave, you teed up my next question perfectly, because as someone who has studied justice, studied Black feminism, studied abolition. I don't exist without Chicago. Because I don't exist without the work of Barbara Ramsey. I don't exist without the work of Kathy Cohen. I don't exist
Also
without
a
the work
snake
of
oil
Beth Ritchie.
salesman.
I don't exist without the work of Charlene Carruthers. I mean, y'all got all the heavy hitters, and then Stacey Davis Gates. So it's like, how does a place, when I read like Beth Ritchie's works, and she talks about imprisonation, right? This idea that Black women not.
Oh shit! I didn't mean to do that. God damn it! Hang on. Ah! Sorry, I hit the wrong button.
Connection to the crib.
Hang on. I hit the wrong button. Oh shit. Where were we? Where were we? We're Bettina Love. I wanted to make a point. Oh gosh. Sorry guys, I screwed that up. That was my fault. I think that's about where we are. But I was trying to hit pause and I failed. Absolutely. But Gremlin says, is he a narcissist? No, he is not a narcissist. And one thing I'm going to try to encourage people is stop calling people you disagree with narcissists. Stop calling people who have a tone you don't like narcissists. Stop throwing this word around as though it means nothing. People throw this word around like people throw the term racist around on the left. The term narcissist has an actual definition of it. And no one on this panel is a narcissist. No one on this panel is a real and true narcissist. Well, you did ask, right? Like stop. I'm going to strongly encourage everyone, stop throwing this term around as though it means nothing, because it doesn't mean nothing. And every single time you throw, and by the way, it's also not a really good insult. It's not a good insult at all. You're using a mental health problem that develops in childhood as an insult every time you call someone a narcissist to try to undermine what they're saying and what they're doing.
On who
it's just not productive is my point. It is not a productive use of our energy.
Has studied justice, studied Black feminism, studied abolition. I don't exist without Chicago. Because I don't exist without the work of Barbara Ramsey. I don't exist without the work of Kathy Cohen. I don't exist without the work of Beth Ritchie. I don't exist without the work of Charlene Carruthers. I mean, y'all got all the heavy hitters, and then Stacey Davis Gates. So it's like, how does a place, when I read like Beth Ritchie's works, and she talks about imprisonation, right? This idea that Black women not being able to have these conversations in these spaces. And then here in Chicago, with the...
Stop. They do not see white people as below them. This is not accurate. You need to stop thinking in these terms. They do not see white people as below them. If that's what critical race theory is not about race, it is only about power. When you are looking at the race-related arguments that they're making, and you're assuming that that has to do with the color of your skin, you are missing the larger nuance to what is going on. They do not see white people as below them. That's not the point. They don't even mean color of your skin when they're saying the term white. They mean who owns the power structure. So I'm sorry, but anyone who tells you anyone who tells you this is not correct. Not correct. I mean, if you want to bring this shit into my chat, I don't care how many times you compliment me, honey. You're not correct. I'm sorry. And we don't play these games here. I can show you plenty of YouTube channels that are run by absolute raging morons who only want to get likes and clicks on their content and don't actually understand what they are talking about. So I'm sorry. We don't okay. Last warning. We don't play this game here. We don't play this race baiting game here. You can compliment me as much as you like, and I do appreciate the compliments, but we are going for a much more nuanced perspective here. And that ain't it. That race baiting game, that ain't it. So I recommend that you sit back and you listen and you go watch some of my happy hours and you learn what they're really talking about. Because when they use the term whiteness, they are not talking about the color of your skin. They are talking about who owns the power structure. And that person who owns the power structure could be any race under the sun. It does not matter.
Brainchild of Black feminist radical movement, queer Black feminist ideas at the helm of everything, right? So you don't get Black Youth 100 Project without Kathy Cohen. Like, it's so much about how we think about movements right now that the world is thinking about, that comes out of the intellectual scholarship of Chicago, the on the ground scholarship that impacts the intellectual scholarship. There's such a communal experience that is happening between the scholarship, the ivory tower, the scholarship, the on the ground, the political movements, the young people, and engineered by those Black women. So tell us, like, what is it like being in these spaces and learning from these individuals and what they've given you and the playbook that they've given us? And I'll start with you, Stacey.
Look, I don't get a voice. You know, you can go to Lucy, you can go to
You don't
Ivy,
get a
you can go to
voice.
Jackie Vaughn,
You're literally on the internet right
Lewis,
now. You don't get a voice, please.
There is a muscle for Black women in Chicago to lead. There is a muscle for Black women in Chicago to have voice. What all of the women that you named have in common is that they lead from a very principled space of coalition and community. And I think that that is important, especially in this moment, to name the type of Black female leadership that is necessary, because these hashtags trust Black women, not all of them. So we have to also name the ones that stand in the tradition and the light of liberation, of self-determination, of clarity of purpose, right? You can have a Black woman lead, but where is she leading us? You can have a Black woman lead, but what are the principles and the values that undergird that leadership? Be clear about that, because we've had a mayor ride in on the work of all of those women that you named without producing the results that those women were able to till for her to be in the
Wait, are they?
now. So having some clarity of that, and also having
what
some
is that
to movement, like who sent you, who your people.
What is that mayor's name in Chicago? What is her name? She looks like Beetlejuice. What is her name? Are they dragging her? What the, was she mayor at this time? They're basically they're saying like, you didn't do anything for us. That's funny. That's funny. So I told you guys, Lightfoot, Lori Lightfoot. That's what it is. Lori Lightfoot. Thank you, bot. And Tristram. So yeah, so like these guys do not like the progressives. They do not like them. And in the same way, Black Lives Matter does not feel like Joe Biden has done anything for them either. I mean, Black Lives Matter is now kind of losing all relevance because they're like, as an organization, they're losing relevance. But what you guys need to hear, Black Lives Matter curriculum is still in the classroom. Black Lives Matter curriculum is being used in the classroom all over the effing place. So just because Black Lives Matter as an organization is like losing a lot of credibility because their founders are frauds and cheats and they're getting indicted, like don't misunderstand. Their content is still in the classroom starting in kindergarten. But the point I want to make is like the uber left does not like the Democratic Party. They do not like the progressives. They don't think they go far enough.
People, what have you produced? And being able to grapple with that and see that in the filter of liberation, in the filter
communism,
of who gets what and how. I think those are important because neoliberals will co-opt Black women leadership to use this for our vote, to use this for our voice, to use this for our pain, and then turn right back around and make it more painful, right? And that's what we'll be faced with after this election, is that we'll go all in, we'll stroll to the poll, right? We'll figure out how to be there because we recognize how to, look, we can survive and we can put other people's needs before our own. Mm. And then we are left figuring it out for ourselves. That being, name your Black women leadership like you did, because that's going to continue to be important, but then also begin to clarify the values and the principles that provide that leadership and the coalition that they originate. I don't want you if you ain't came with someone else because you don't understand how we get there together.
I mean, you just gave a sermon, you gave the word, you dropped the mic. I mean, if we didn't have another hour, I would just say, everybody go home. What she just said, and then get to work. But say that for me one more time. You said Chicago has the muscle.
There are Black women who've been doing.
Are you guys sure you want me to leave these captions on? I'll leave them on.
That Black women have had an opportunity to always,
but they're not right. They're not correct.
But haven't always had the opportunity to be it, to hold the mic. And sometimes we don't even want the mic. But we've always been here. We've always provided the infrastructure. We've always been able to see around corners and see everyone else because that is the position that we often find ourselves in, which is why we're able to lead in this moment.
All right, I'm going to turn the captions off.
It is important though, and I
we'll
think
check back in
I'm
later.
going to say this over and over again. Who sent you? Who are you with? And why are you here? And what do you intend for us?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No,
like those pronouns are important.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Dave, you want to follow up?
I mean, look, the first thing I thought about when I heard Stacey talking was like, look, we're talking about a city where you would see Gwendolyn Brooks in the street, right? Just in the street, right? Literally, like no high siding. Gwendolyn Brooks walking down 53rd, and my pops fanboying, right? Like literally, like, yo, do you know? Like literally, I was probably about 7 years old. Gwendolyn Brooks walks past us. First thing he says to me, "Do you know who this is?" And I was like, no. And he was like, look, all I need you to understand is Gwendolyn Brooks came to my school in 3rd grade and she read "We Real Cool," right? And I was like, damn, right? And the reverence he had for her, right? So being able to understand, because Gwendolyn Brooks was gonna ask you, who sent you? Where do you come from? What are you here to do? Right? That's a Chicago question because that's a life or death question here, right? Because if you sent by the ops, we making sure you ain't getting out, right? So now when you say those things, it's reflective of what this movement means, right? It's reflective of the work.
He's saying nothing. He's saying literally nothing.
That has been impacted in this particular way.
Sin
right? So
is not
really
wrong.
Allows us to understand when Fred Hampton and Mark Clark were executed in their home, it was a fear of the state on their bodies. It was the fear of the state to say, look, when these folks start to organize, if they get it right or if they get it together, there is nothing we can do to stop them. So now,
he's correct
here in this
that.
moment, as
what
people begin to organize yet again, you see a mayor who is much more
He just talked about the Rainbow Coalition and Fred Hampton getting assassinated. Fred Hampton was like a Black Panther in like the 60s. I always get the date. I think it's like the late 60s. That basically the Black Panthers in Chicago teamed up with like the KKK in Chicago because it was a populist movement, because what they realized was they actually had a lot more, besides the skin color thing, they actually had a lot more in common than they did with even some people on their own side. And so they actually formed a coalition. It's called the Rainbow Coalition. And they started actually doing stuff and like, you know, organizing, and the state was so afraid of it that they had Fred Hampton assassinated. So that is actually true. What he said is actually true, and it's a valid point. And sometimes, and I want to really point this out because, like, you know, after the 2020 election, I kind of got on this bend, and I still actually do believe in this. I think that MAGA Trump supporters actually have more in common with like average Black Lives Matter activists than they do with the rhinos in their own party. I think that's true. I think if we're talking about average people, I'm not talking about the people running Black Lives Matter. I'm talking about average MAGA people and average Black Lives Matter activists. They have more in common than MAGA people do with the rhinos running their party. And for the Black Lives Matter activists, they have more in common with like the MAGA people than they do the Democrats running their party. If they figured this out, they could be an unstoppable populist coalition. They don't figure it out though because they don't talk to each other. And then on the right, everyone comes in and goes, "No, they're Marxists." And then on the left, they come in, "No, they're deplorable." And they start reading about everything. And the tribalists ruin everything. But if you actually look at what they believe in, they do actually have more in common with each other than they do with the elites. And the minute that real people figure out that they have more in common with other real people than they do with people that are running the establishment, that's when things start to get really interesting. That's what happened with the Black Lives Matter coalition in Chicago, and they were right. And if these people were smart, they would be forming the same thing with the MAGA people, but they won't, because that would involve listening to people that you disagree with, and we've just moved past that as a society.
Concerned with the potential votes of her white constituents than she is with engaging young folks on the streets, in the blocks, who are demanding of her to defund the police and to engage in a project of abolition, because we know that more cops in schools and more cops will not free us or do right by us, right? So I think that particular being clear about that struggle allows us to see not only where it is that we're
They
from,
should become
but the
libertarian sour
responsibility that
kiwi. I
comes
agree with
it,
you.
right? And I think that's the heaviest thing. Our responsibility in recognizing what does it mean to do the work here and to do it, as Stacey says, in a way that is responsible and accountable.
I love that, because what you both are talking about that's so important is that, yes, Black women leadership is important. It is freeing. It is loving. It will hold communities accountable. But everybody that they put up in front of us is not the folks we should be following. So the folks we should be following, you have to say, well, who sent you? Who are your people? Who do you represent? Those are the Black women. And so I think what you're making that clear message that folks understand, this is not just about a Black woman and a Black body. It's about the politics.
Body, bingo word,
the
ding,
love
ding,
and
ding.
the courage and the kindness and her people who are with her, not behind her, with her. And we have to be lifting those voices up. So as you are watching at home, those folks are in your community. Those women are in your community. They're doing the work.
Folks,
You're not
FOLX.
listening. They're not being heard because they're there. They're always there. So Caleb, tell us. I mean, because I know you know some of these folks. You study with some of these folks. You've grown up with some of these folks.
Yeah. Some of these folks are my homies, and I would not be here if it wasn't for Black women. When you talk about the founders of Village Leadership Academy, those are Black women who were educators who saw a need in the community for quality education for Black children that was grounded in their awareness and their consciousness. So that is one part of it. But then my organizing experience, another woman, Paige May from Chicago. If you don't know that name, you should definitely know that name. We talk about Charlene and Miriam, but Paige, her ability to take the theory and the practice, and then also centering young people with Asada's daughters, and then having this environmental politic as well, is something that, like, he literally taught me how to be an organizer. And I would just add that, like,
he just said he got taught how to be an organizer in school.
Right? So like this idea that like Black feminism only saves Black women. No, this putting the Black woman who has constantly shown up for Black people, all people. Who has constantly been the site of violence, both by community members and the state. When you understand that literally their survival in this society is a contradiction to everything that this society has put forth. And when we live in that, these are the women that are going to teach us how to navigate the climate crisis. These are the women that are navigating gun violence issues in our communities. And these are the women that are doing domestic violence work. And so across the board, Black women have saved me and have saved my idea of what a man should be and what an ally should be to this movement, and understanding that, like, I am not free until my mother is free. I am not free until my sisters are free. And that includes trans women or women that happens to be trans.
Oh, there we go.
So yeah,
those
are just how I see the world. And I'm deeply grateful to Black women, Black queer women, Black non-binary and femmes in this city, and the work and the scholarship that they have put forth for us to digest and to learn from.
I just want to thank you all so much. This is really, I'm learning so much from this conversation. And I really hope that I'm already excited to spread the link for this after it's over. Hopefully people who need to see this and hear your words. God
damn it, I did it again. Fucking hell.
Hopefully people who need.
God, I do this all the time where I hit the wrong button. But I wanted to stop it to say, like, one of the most mind-numbing parts of watching content like this is just how in every single one of these presentations, it inevitably turns into like an ass-kissing contest where they're like, oh my God, so stunning, so brave, so beautiful. Oh my God, this is the best conversation ever. You're so smart. Oh my God. Even if the point you made no sense at all, oh my God, it's just so amazing. And I can't wait to share it with everyone. And I can't wait to have more every single day. Spend like half an hour congratulating each other on being able to talk. Thank you, bot. Thank you. Will you all please tell me how stunning and brave I am in the chat? I would appreciate it. I know. Thank you, bot. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Every fucking presentation, these people do this.
Need to see this and hear your words. Thank you. Okay, I want to.
Are you all honored to be here right now? Just because please tell me you're all. I mean, she's I'm kidding.
Chicago Teachers Union. But the 2012 Chicago Teachers Union strike was huge for me as a teacher.
I did tell you to stop, probably, aliens. I did.
Teacher at the time. And I guess I want you all to talk about the role of the teachers union and the strike.
That's because you were being serious.
Political activism in Chicago.
Oh, thank you. Brave, thank you. I appreciate it. His
the
sound just
school,
got
the
all
strike,
fucked up.
the
That's
union,
not
how
my
it's
end.
all
That's his end.
connected, and what role the strike has played in developing this broader movement. We had some interference on the line there. I don't know if everyone
there
could
it
hear that
goes.
question,
Okay.
but basically, I want you all to talk about the Chicago Teachers Union, the strike, if you remember that far back, and just the role of CTU and its activism in the broader movement. Dave, can we start with you?
Oh my God. Oh. Thank you guys.
Can folks hear me all
I
right?
just don't know.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you.
Yep,
Thank
perfect.
you.
So one of the
Thank
things
you.
that
I
comes
appreciate
out,
it.
and please, Stacey, correct me if I'm messing this up. So one of the things that I remember is a cadre of folks who refer to themselves at this time as the caucus of rank and file educators. This was, as I found it, to be the renegade faction of CTU. And in that renegade faction, Karen Lewis and a couple other folks were literally having kitchen table meetings. So one of my colleagues, Pauline Littman, actually, Karen Lewis told this story to us.
Sometime we should keep track of how many names they drop in a single
She talked about
presentation.
being at a kitchen table, and they read Pedagogy of the Oppressed,
Pedagogy of the Oppressed.
Education,
Ding, ding, ding.
The History of Education of Blacks in the South by James Anderson. Right?
Fuck, we're
So
going to have
they
to
were
read
reading
Pedagogy
these
of the
three
Oppressed
books,
at some
and they
point.
were like, look, what are we going to do? In fact, my partner was actually at some of those meetings, right? So they're reading these three books and they're saying, okay, look, the traditional role of large labor has only been to defend and protect salaries and employment. There's something else here. And there's something else we can learn here from larger struggles and historical struggles.
Pedagogy of the Oppressed is Paolo Fieri,
struggle.
by the way.
And in that learning, they said the first question that came out was, well, what are schools connected to, right? So how are schools connected to housing, healthcare, education, employment, right? So now when they started to ask this question, the caucus, I remember going to, Stacey, I went to one of the first core conferences at King High School. I remember being at the core conference, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's about to be on and popping, because there was another set of closures that they were proposing at this time. And what core did that I thought was critically important, they killed the idea of operating insularly, right? They said, look, we're going to take this out to community folks. We're going to take this to spaces. So myself and Bill Ayers, we would always crack this joke. It was like, man, I just ran into 2 students, 2 teachers, and a firefighter reading the teacher contract under a tree, right? So this thing around like, damn, everybody had a copy of the contract, right? It was this popular education around what this meant. So everybody would be on board, but more importantly, everybody knew that the shift was now going to be away from the protection of salaries, away from the protection of employment, and now to be a justice-centered union. It changed the whole dynamic. It changed how
justice-centered union.
And something else. So when they got into power and one late as the caucus of rank and file educators, one of the first things they did, instead of relying solely on shop stewards, they hired a bunch of community organizers as staff to continue the message. Right. So now it just wasn't this thing that was happening happenstance or for this one moment of the contract, but it was literally saying we are a union that is committed to justice, and good teaching conditions are good working conditions. And these spaces are the ones that we now are connected to. So it's no longer just about our jobs, but what are we connected to? And now, so if you look at the reports coming out of the Quest Center, you see all this stuff around gentrification and unemployment. You see this stuff around disinvestment. You know, the Quest Center did not used to do that work, right? So shout to the homies, Carol Karef, Sarah Rothschild, and all the folks who are doing that work. So again, this, and it's important to communicate to your viewers that this is a seismic shift. It had never been done before. And more importantly, and I'll end with this, when the strike happened, remember, Marion Wright Edelman's son came to Chicago and created an organization and actually shifted Illinois law that said that 75% of your membership had to approve a strike, not 75% of the people.
Got a question from Cold Summer. Why do you think a lot of socialists in the education system are Black? I don't. Just because we're watching Black socialists right now doesn't mean that a lot of socialists in the education system are Black. A lot of the socialists in the education system are white. Most of the people who are running the teachers' unions are white. Most school teachers are white. So I do not believe that this is a correct assumption to make. Just because we're watching a presentation with Black people right now, the reason this has Black people right now is they specifically focus this on Black liberation within the education system. So of course it's going to be Black people, of course it is, but this is not a representative group of who are the socialists in the education system. There are plenty of white socialists, I promise you. There are plenty of white socialists.
People who voted. 75% of the membership. So in 2012, Chicago Teachers Union had 93% of the membership who voted to now move toward a justice-centered organization, right? So this...
In fact, I'm going to be honest. Like, so Haymarket Books is legitimately socialist. The dude that's kind of like leading this presentation, legitimately socialist. Bettina Love, legitimately socialist. I'm not convinced that this guy is. I'm not actually convinced that this guy understands that he's a socialist. I don't think that kid understands he's a social. He's being like forced, like having socialism forced on him. The other woman with the good hair, I think she gets it. I'm pretty sure, but I really don't think this guy does actually get it.
Changed the whole dynamic, but it was only because of the existing work in Chicago that you could have a table meeting where you are reading Pedagogy of the Oppressed, High Stakes Education, and the History of Education of Blacks in the South, right? So really putting that in context, that was huge for us because for many Black folks, CTU had been antagonistic until somebody like Jackie Vaughn came and shifted things and was still met with a bunch of hostility by white members, right? So again, this shift is critical. And I apologize in advance, Stacey, if I've messed up for a historical record, right? But I'll stop there.
Let's go to Stacey last on this. Caleb, how do you see the teachers union and the teachers union?
I don't think I have enough experience or I've done enough sitting in history to be able to follow up on in either of their accounts. But I would say as a young person who was, I still remember the diet hunger strike. I still remember seeing members, elders from COCO, folks that I was told they were handing the torch to us, right? Like they were like getting ready to sit down and have elders literally go days, months without, I don't know the exact number of days, but a long time without food and only surviving some on juice and water. It was really inspiring. And then to see that they actually saved the school and to see that the plan that was so radical for the school, like this technology centric, that was meeting the environment, that was meeting social justice. It was something that was incredibly inspiring to see that and to go to some of the actions on the South Side in support of that was amazing.
He's talking about his school being built around social justice.
My organizing experience to go and read Eve Ewing's book, Ghosts in the Schoolyard.
So what he's basically talking about, I think, if I'm getting this correctly, I'm pretty sure he went to like a charter school or something that was literally built around the idea of social justice. I've seen charter schools like this pop up in Chicago and in Washington, D.C. And I'm sure there are many other places as well. But charter schools that are overtly around training the next generation of social justice activists. And so I'm pointing this out because you really need to be aware that charter schools are not necessarily less woke than public schools. In fact, charter schools and private schools can sometimes be more woke than public schools. I think this kid is like a victim of his environment. I think that he has been taught these ideas his entire life. He is giving us insight into what is produced when an educational system is built entirely around developing social justice activists. But I don't want to in terms of he's not one of the people driving this agenda. He is one of the people that is a victim of this agenda. And I really do want people to start seeing people, especially he's very young, guys. He is very young. He is as much of a victim of this as anyone else is. This is all he's ever known. This is literally what his school taught him. He did not do anything wrong by trusting his school. His school failed him.
About the closing of the schools and how this was such a phenomenon that was bigger than me, and I was literally living in it, and to see that I wasn't a part.
Hang on, probably aliens. We are not rude to each other in the chat. I agree with some of the things that songs that are catchy is saying. So please do not be rude in my chat. And I'm giving you a warning because I just don't want to see it again. We're not rude to each other in this chat.
Part of CPS during that time. I was at Village Leadership Academy, but to see teachers from all different type of school districts come out and support educators and principals say, oh no, we're not going to school because
it's all good, probably
CPS
aliens.
It's
so
all
like, good.
That was something that was super powerful.
Just a warning,
well.
No big deal. I didn't block you or anything. I don't
have much of the chronological history and understanding of that, but to witness, it definitely shifted how asserted their power or understood about power, and the fact that these educators were fighting for us and were fighting for our communities and something bigger than us. It really showed the importance of a intergenerational movement and also a movement that is grounded in different politics. It can't just be about education, right? Education is linked to housing. It is linked to mental health. It is linked to food deserts. It is linked to gentrification. It is linked to Black feminism, right? Like all of these things sit at the intersections of each other, so that we have to begin to imagine schooling and the schooling as like this organism of the world, right? So many times educators and people think that young people show up to school and they just come in with books and pencils. And
I just want to say, to clarify, probably aliens, you're just like, you're fine. You're relatively, like, I haven't seen you in the chat before. You're new, you're excited. It's just fine. I understand that in other chats, like, it's basically a free-for-all, but just so people know, I do curate my chat because I know that people who are regulars, they appreciate that I really do try to maintain a relatively nice environment on my channel. Like, I don't like the insults. I don't like the typical YouTube creator nonsense. I just really have an aversion to it. We're having to watch content that kind of sucks. Okay, we're doing deep dives into like very far left socialism content, like at this point, and this content kind of sucks. And as much as like this content sucks, I just want to create a nice environment for us to be able to make this as fun of an experience as we can, because we're dealing with rough subject matter. Okay, so that's all I'm saying. Like, no harm, no foul, dude. Like, if I don't put you in a timeout or anything, you're not doing anything too wrong. But I just like, that's what I'm trying to do. Like, I'm trying to create a nice environment for everyone. That's all.
And they don't come in with none of the trauma outside of the classroom. So if we can shift how we think about schools and how we handle the trauma that young people carry in their book bags every single day, then in that we are essentially dealing with the social paradigms of our society.
Thank you. Thank you both for those responses. I want to turn it to you now, Stacy, to tell us from the inside about, what this has meant to you and what you think, connect the dots for us between CORE and CTU and schools in the city.
So I'm a founding member of CORE, right? At the same time, I started having babies and, got married and started having babies. So, that is a very concentrated, like, part of my personal timeline. CORE said that our union should be fighting for the justice of education in Chicago. I remember my first interaction with the union was a lobby trip to Springfield, and we met at the merchandise mart because that's where our offices were at the time. And there was a limousine with the leaders of the union, and then there was a charter bus.
There's a limousine with the fucking teachers union leaders. Are you kidding?
I was just confused. And so I spent that entire day.
Why are the leaders of the teachers union getting a chartered limousine?
But just confused, And you get this sheet of what you're supposed to be in a lobby for, and I know where I work, and it was just a confusing experience for me. And then Arnie Duncan comes to our school and he says he's shutting us down, and then we go into this like organizing stance. We're gonna save our school, not. And so we go to these board meetings. No one's listening to you. It's not participatory. And then you see all of the folks in the community come, and then I'm like, is that right? Is that what people want? It was just all such an education. And I felt like we were missing a power pole. Like somehow there was something else that we were missing, and it was our union. That's what we were missing, right? We were missing something institutional, something funded. Look, don't sleep on funding. Don't sleep on the ability to resource the movement, right? And so it was our union, because Coco was there, BPNC was there, and Lasse was there, Pilsen Alliance was there, Pauline was there, Rico was there. You know, there were all of these people who were already there and tuned up on this. We joined them because the community was already there. They'd already recognized the injustice. Remember, the Mid-South plan hit the Bronzeville area first, and Coco had been going back and forth on that. So it wasn't that we figured it out, it's that we joined. Right? We joined in coalition and had enough sense to ask questions and had enough sense to, you know, be a part.
You know what? She is making a really good point here that I hope people are listening. I hope we move beyond the teachers unions leadership got limos. Okay, that's bad and that's fine. But she's actually making a really salient point. They were not happy with the leadership that they had. And so what did they do? They got involved and they took over the teachers union. If you aren't happy with the leadership that you have to get involved. And this is one of the things I think people should be taking away from this is the activists got pissed that the people weren't doing what they wanted them to do. And so they got involved and they took over and they threw them out. Yeah, well, they do want communism. They do, legitimately. Again, the goals of the woke left are get as much power as possible by taking over the teachers union in this case, to destabilize the system, to attack capitalism, to usher in their little Marxist utopia. Again, everything that these people do, get as much power as possible to destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in their Marxist utopia. So yeah, they do want to get rid of capitalism, but they're going about it in a way that we need to be paying attention to. Cold Summer 91, I agree. It's very iffy that there will be a red wave in 2022. What do you think about 2024? I think things none of us are seeing will happen in 23, 24. I don't think there's going to be a red wave in November. I don't think there's going to be a red wave at all. I think I think the very most that's going to happen is that the Republicans are going to narrowly take the House back, which is fine. But I do not believe there's going to be a red wave in 2022 at all. And 2024, I think there's going to be a libertarian spoiler for president in 2024. And I think it's really going to fuck the Republicans. And I think the Republicans don't see it coming. But I think there will be a libertarian spoiler for president in 2024. I will be voting for that libertarian spoiler, just so everyone is clear. The Republicans haven't learned anything. They haven't gotten their acts together. Could they get their acts together? Sure. But they haven't yet. We'll see if getting their ass kicked in November does the trick.
Had enough sense to take some direction and leadership as well. So those are the things that I think informed how we behave now, is that we didn't invent it, but we understood the power of it. And then one critical thing that I think helped me was, and I can't remember the name of the book, but when I first started working at CTU, it wasn't all of the other like social, racial justice part of it. It was how to be in coalition. It was how to,
hang on. This has nothing to do with the presentation, but how's my governor's race going? I'm going to be on the ballot. We got confirmation. I actually have my official confirmation letter in this here envelope. I am going to be on the ballot in November. I ain't going to win anything. Let's be honest. I'm not going to win, but I'll be on the ballot, and that's pretty cool. Thank you for asking.
Be in coalition, because coalition is not easy. We throw it around. But you get mad, you don't like each other, it don't make sense, it take too long, it's all of these things, you know what I mean? And it's the only way, right? It is the only way that we get to where we are supposed to get. Now, I do still think we need to short circuit some of this. That's just my own personal. And that's the only way we get there. So 2012, I think, was about an announcement. It was an announcement to the world that we had the ability to create, provide, push through a message that centered racial justice. I think that was what it was. We said apartheid schools. We said black and brown. We said we live in a city that has stolen money from taxpayers on the south side and the west side and constructed an entire downtown, right? The cynical nature of how the city operates.
These people are libertarians. They just don't realize it.
Incremental financing. that was created by Harold Washington to build up, right, the capital of neighborhoods, and you port that money out of those neighborhoods and you build skyscrapers.
We don't have
on
state
LaSalle
income
Street,
tax
which
in
is
New
our
Hampshire.
financial district.
We don't
Right?
have it.
Meanwhile, you have schools that don't have everything that they need to have. Meanwhile, you laying off teachers. Meanwhile, you're privatizing schools, firing every Black person that's in that school, hiring a younger, whiter, more transient workforce, right? You are destroying the Black middle class. So this whole concept that Caleb talked about, that school is a center. And you can see gentrification, you can see racism, you can see all of the isms happen that are connected. You know, we often talk about the school plan in Chicago wrongly. It wasn't about the schools, it's about the land, right? You shut the schools down. You shut it down. It's about reclaiming that space and pushing out folks. Like we are still in the middle of the largest exodus of Black people from this city right now, because we've torn down we've allowed the public housing to be torn down. Right now, they are going to close hospitals on the south side of Chicago in the middle of a pandemic, and Black people are dying 3-1 to white counterparts of COVID-19, and they're about to shut a hospital down on the south side of Chicago with the Black mayor.
Bot's right. The Zoom isn't 30 minutes. I gotta speed this up.
2012 was about the amplification.
I gotta speed this up.
It was about the fight. It was about getting out that corner, right? You can either fold or you can fight. 12 was about getting out of that corner and demonstrating power and coalition and saying that there is another way and that people are going to have to either fight us or they're going to have to give us what we are taking or move out of the way. So I think that was 12. And
I think that's very true, Cold Summer. I think it's true.
Rom said 150 schools.
People got to start voting Libertarian if you want anything to change.
Audience,
nothing is going to change until people do.
Everybody know that. You don't tell me right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, this man closed down tons of schools on Black children and is on ABC talking politics. Nowhere else in this world can you do harm to Black people and get a raise. You know, you think about that. Think about that. He on TV right now telling us something about America.
Listen to how much they hate Rahm Emanuel.
But he caused trauma and harm to Black people and he gets a raise? Anyway, next question.
Let me just say, you are a master class tonight. A master class of not only organizing,
you are
building,
stunning,
but also
you are
the
brave, you are beautiful.
The critical lens it takes to do this work, and the courage it takes to do this work, and to speak.
You are so amazing and incredible.
And so I'm in awe of the masterclass y'all are putting on.
I am in awe.
And to the folks who are watching at home, please, we have people right now who are ready to pull your questions from the YouTube chat, and that we have a document to see them. So if you have questions for Stacey, for Caleb, for the panel, for Dave, please put those questions in the YouTube chat box. And then those questions will get filtered to myself and Brian, and we'll be asking those questions shortly for the Q&A. So if you have questions, please put them in the YouTube chat box, and then those questions get to us. And then when we have the Q&A portion, we'll try our best to ask as many questions as we can. So the little bit of time we have left, I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions. Caleb, I really want to go to you first and just talk about and tell us about the youth organizing, the youth groups on the ground that are pushing and doing this work alongside the union, alongside all the other mechanisms, all these other organizations. Tell us about the youth organizations in Chicago that we should know about, should learn about, and whatever you want to tell us about them and their trajectory and their goals and their missions.
Yeah, word. Young folk are really doing the thing right now in Chicago and have been doing it for a minute.
Weaponized use, Paulo Fieri, Pedagogy of the Oppressed.
Shout out Black Rising. Shout out Fuerte. Shout out many young independent organizers who don't have an organizing home.
Chicago is Paulo Fieri in action.
Different spaces and contribute so much to them. Shout out the Let Us Breathe Collective. Shout out BYP 100. Shout out Chicago Votes. These are all young people across the spectrum that are doing amazing work.
We should read Pedagogy of the Oppressed at some point.
Doesn't get said enough in the city. A big sister. And I would say that for youth organizing in the city, it has become ingrained in young people to fight for something in the city. It's so many issues, whether it be food deserts, whether it be gun violence, whether it be police violence, whether it be educational apartheid or medical apartheid. Young people see these issues. They experience these issues. They saw their mothers die of COVID. They saw their fathers being incarcerated. They feel these walls being built around them. And the only way young folks have bridged a new life is through fight and resistance. So they continue to do that. And they will continue to do that. And I'm proud to be in relationship with some of these people. Donate to them, give them your money, give us your money. With this fight, people always donate money in times of rebellion, but it is what is the quote? It's like a shield is never built in a time of war. It's built in a time of peace, right? These young people are organized in 300.
A shield is never built in times of war. It's built in times of peace. What he's telling us right now is really important. He's telling us that the city of Chicago has basically built its educational system on weaponizing youth by creating activists so that they can build the shield in times of peace. The left is really good at building shields in times of peace so that they're already ready to go once it really matters. We all suck at building the shield during the time of peace. We really suck at it. And that's why we're in the position that we're in. Please do Pedagogy of the Oppressed, incredibly important literature for everyone to know in order to understand what we're up against. Maybe we will. We were talking about, I want to do Communist Manifesto next. I think the Communist Manifesto is going to be our next book club book. But Pedagogy of the Oppressed can go on the list. And yeah, James Lindsay has done excellent work around Pedagogy of the Oppressed. So I definitely encourage everyone to check out what he has to say on it. I do like reading things myself, though. Listen, I love James Lindsay. James Lindsay is critical. I will never say anything bad about James Lindsay. But I like doing things myself and coming to my own conclusions. I don't like, other people telling me what to think. And I think everyone should feel that way. And ultimately, if you end up agreeing with things that James Lindsay says, great. And if you don't, that's fine too. But I think that we need all perspectives on the table here. And to be blunt, I probably would end up agreeing with James Lindsay just because he usually is correct. Usually. Not always. Usually.
65 days a year, not just when George Floyd has a knee on his neck and we see the video, right? Not just when we learn about Breonna Taylor's name. These young people have been doing the work for years, and it's time for us to put some respect on their names. It's time for us to start funding them. It's time for us to reimagine this nonprofit industrial complex, one that seeks to give grants to so many Chicago nonprofits, but then pass young folk up like me who've been doing the work for literally years and grant makers not wanting to give us money. It is about that as well that continues to sustain the work. It is about the mental health of young people. Do you know that the Chicago Police Department is arresting 18-year-olds protesting and charging them with felonies? This we have to put this in like, that is fascism. That is the state that is literally doling out violence on the same children it has failed and it has sworn to protect, right? So like Miracle Boyd, Good Kids Mad City, had her teeth knocked out this summer. Understand that like this system, this state, this surveillance industry that governments are complacent in is literally haunting the psyche and the bodies of young organizers in this city.
Yeah, I want to get to the Q&A. I want the Q&A.
Yes. Thank you, Caleb, for that. I'm going to go to you next, Stacey, about the young folk. Before I do that, thank you for shouting out Bella Barnes. Thank you for shouting out. We got to talk about my little sister, FM Supreme Chicago, and the work of EU and just amazing folks. Dave, going to you about how do you see the youth playing in this role? How do you see some of the youth organizations that you're inspired by and the work that they're doing?
Man, I mean, the thing that I am the most impressed with, and the thing that I can say publicly that I've learned from young people, is the capacity to demand joy, right? And I say that in the realest sense because I thought more of my work as like a fight in a phone booth, right? It's like you in here, you only one of us getting out, like this is what's going down, and man, I'm ready to go. Man, nobody is going to defeat me in this space, right? Until that type of mentality does two things. It disables your capacity to see, it disables your capacity to hear, and it disables your capacity to pay attention to yourself, to the point where I was killing myself physically. Like literally, doctors telling me that I have all these preconditions for really bad health problems, right? And then I see young folks in the street and shout to Caleb and all the time.
As a reminder, whether people like to hear it or not, the emotions that you experience in your head will eventually make their way into your body. If you are constantly experiencing stress and anger and outrage and depression and anxiety in your head, most of the times self-inflicted based on watching the news or being angry at people for no good reason, that will eventually make you sick. So it is not at all surprising to me to hear that this guy, especially because this guy's a little wound up, he has literally made himself physically sick as diagnosed by his doctor because he has spent his life wound up about these issues.
Fam, because one of the illest protests I've seen in my life was 3,000 young folks this summer in the front of Lori Lightfoot's house, the mayor of Chicago, having a party, right? And I was just like, yo, this is the coldest ever. And all it was a demand for joy, right? And coming up, I'll be like, man, joy, love.
Why do you have to have a protest and demand for joy?
We gotta get out. If you ain't bleeding out your eyes, what are you doing? right?
That's how you got
that
sick,
thing
dude.
around
That's how
really
you made yourself
revisiting
sick.
that and looking at young folks and saying, they on to something here. And
We
something
should
you
just
told
let
me a
them
long
all
time
make
ago, but
themselves sick.
I didn't make a connection
That would make
until
the
you
world
said
so
it.
much better.
Kendrick Lamar's song "All Right" is a freedom song, and when I actually saw that in terms of thinking about how it was being used and how those freedom songs are connected, because just a couple of days ago I heard an old gospel spiritual that said, "Ain't no danger in my God's waters," and I'm just like, damn. And it said, all you got to do is get on board. I'm like, man, right? So when you think about what that means, man, ain't no danger, right? So if you have made a
Like,
conscious
he
decision
has not
to
said
love,
anything,
it ain't
and
no
this
danger,
bitch is like,
right?
oh,
There's
you
nothing that you have to
amazing.
worry about, right? The only
Amazing.
thing you got to worry about is breaking your chains, right? So I attribute that entirely to young folks and my partner Irene for making me understand a commitment to love and joy, because I didn't have those commitments. I thought my commitment was to struggle, and I thought struggle was only pain and desolation, right? So this thing around really figuring out what does it mean to love in a struggle, right? And I think that was a tough lesson for me, but I deeply credit young folks and my partner for putting me onto that. Because man, look, when I saw that party, 3,000 young folks getting it in, I was like, man, look, this it ain't nothing you can do to stop this, right? I mean, to the point where people are coming out their houses, not calling the police, but joining the party, right? I'm like, man, this is a whole nother level, right? So you think it's a block party, a celebration? Ain't no permit. We in the street doing it. But I think that is reflective of that commitment to joy that I definitely credit young folks for reminding me of and challenging me to engage.
Ooh, thank you, Jay, for that. Not only for that, but for that vulnerability. Because that's also a part of the work, is to be vulnerable. That's right. And to heal and to find that love and joy through vulnerability in community. So I thank you for sharing that. Stacey.
Ain't nothing else to say. I mean, there's nothing else to say. I mean, listen, I spent all summer praying for protection for all of the young organizers out here, but also being filled with their hope, their courage, and their joy. Their freedom, their acceptance of each other, their courage, the love that they communicate to one another and to us, like love, like they love us. They really love us. They really love us. They love us even if we don't love them. Think about trans, queer. Think about the lack of acceptance that our institutions provide, that our family structures shun. And they out here gladiating for us because they love us. Yeah, humbled. That's what the word is, humbled by their leadership, their sacrifice. I am encouraged and challenged to be better, to lead better, to reflect better. I am a better person because of their lead right now. I am more thoughtful. This is what I'm saying about like being a teacher in this moment. I would be a better classroom teacher in this moment. I'm a better mother in this moment. I am more aware of their hearts in this moment. You know, the way that they talk about toxic parenting, the toxicity of our family structures, and being more aware and available to examine my practice. It's like, damn, I wish I was here when I first started teaching because I would have gotten a lesson. No, real talk, right? I go back to the classroom now, I'm better than I ever was when I was there already, because they have a great deal of reflection to what it feels like to be a child, a Black student, a Black person. You know, I think of Keith Blair right now. I shouldn't have probably called his whole name. I think of him right now in my classroom for a lot of different reasons. But I don't just think about him. I think about the missed opportunities because I did not have capacity and understanding of who that child was when he was in front of me and what I was supposed to offer and couldn't in support and protection of who that child was, that person, that teenager was in that moment. And I can't help but think that the example and the leadership that the Black organizers are doing in this moment would have made me better. And we have to connect protest to pedagogy to practice. We have to, because if you pay attention.
We have to connect protests to pedagogy to practice. She is on the effing teachers union. We have to connect protest to pedagogy to practice. Pedagogy is what they're teaching in the classroom. I just want to rewind a little bit. We're going to have to speed up, guys, because I do have a locals call in 15 minutes, but I want to listen just to this bit again because I think that this is important.
I can't help but think that the example and the leadership that the Black organizers are doing in this moment would have made me better. And we have to connect protest to pedagogy to practice. We have to, because if you pay attention to all of what they've learned, you know, this is why I'm so irritated by this term learning loss in this moment. Think about what you are experiencing for young folks in this moment. Learning loss where? Learning loss who? They are leading, revolutionizing, changing, reflecting. They are making educators who are paying attention change practice. They really are. You ain't talking about anti-racist practice in the classroom because of a professional development. You're talking about that because of the struggle in the streets.
Say that. Say that.
Two-speed.
No,
Two-speed. We're doing it live.
Oh, no. Oof. All right, I think for time we should. There's so much more that I want to ask, but for time I think we should start letting some of these questions from the audience come in. Let me read a couple. Let me read like two, and then people can just go around. One thing we always get in these panels, something that's along the lines of like, how do I even get started? People are always asking that. Like, if I'm not in a place where I'm riding a wave and there's lots of movement around me, how do I get started? Katrina asks, writes, I'm a school social worker in a school district in Georgia, Cobb County, that does not acknowledge that Black lives matter. Where do I even begin to impact change here? I feel like I'm underwater. And then I'm going to add another one just to give you a layer to work with. Sherry asks, can you talk about the calls for defunding the police and the connection with schools and the role of unions, especially public sector unions?
Should have gone right to the Q&A. We should have gone right to the Q&A.
Start with you, Dave.
Yeah, I'll take the piece
on
God,
here we go.
Cobb County. And man, one love to you for being in Cobb County off top, because it's real down there. You're in a right to work state, and there's a lot of stuff happening. One of the things that I think is critically important that I'm seeing people is just make the claim, this is the moment for bravery, right? Just saying, look, I got a bunch of Black babies in my classroom in front of my face every day. If I am not willing to say to them that they matter to me and that they are valuable, I don't know what my job is here. Right? I mean, literally saying that. And don't fear them firing you, because they can't fucking replace you now, right? Their hands are on, they can't have their hands on the chicken switch anymore, right? And then when you say that in this way, now it challenges them. And then it's because this is what they're gonna say, right? We know this one, right? And what about all lives mattering? There has never been a moment in the history of the United States when your white life has not mattered and been the center of the universe of analysis, understanding, pedagogy, and engagement. Now, what are we willing to do? I got Black babies in front of my face who are crying their eyes out because they're not sure when that squad car comes if they won't get their brains blown out for absolutely no reason. So now, when I say their lives matter, and when I connect that to a larger political struggle, I am saying they are not alone, right? And all you need is one other person to join forces with you. Not the person who says it in secret, not the person who hides behind a podium and then peeks out and whispers to you, but the person who says, okay, this is what it is, right? Because if they want to be data informed, then damn it, the data is in front of our face. And now we're willing to say, and I think that becomes important. It's not to admonish anyone's struggle, but it's to understand that, look, we got to be clear about this. And if we are not clear about this, we will be victimized by the distractions, like a question about all lives mattering. So now we have to, that clarity, I think, is key in this, because trust, and I think it's important to say, as soon as you make a claim about anything justice, they are about to come. You should expect them, right? And when they come to your front door, you say, what took you so long? Shit, I was waiting, homie. Oh, okay, now y'all on deck. Okay, let's rap about it, right? So I think this thing around really being clear about that, and this is the moment to stand up for them, because we can't leave those young folks hanging, right? And I think when we are that brave, now it changes.
We should have watched the whole thing on times 2 speed.
We gotta be that brave in that moment, right? In terms of not having.
Thank God we got there at the end.
That peril and that precarity, right? That they are unsure of, right? So this thing around really, I think this is the moment of all moments to step up. But we have to keep that in our ideology and our understanding every day, right? But and it's going to be a fight, but trust that you are not alone. But the way that you make yourself heard is the understanding that you're not alone when the people begin to join you when you've made that claim. Everybody ain't scared, but they just got to see one person step up. And now when they see that one person step up, they'll be willing to do it too, and trust that.
Wow, thank you. Caleb.
Yeah, word.
He's
I'm
overwhelmed.
from the perspective of a young person who has sat in classrooms with educators who claim Black Lives Matter, but then when my Black life was at stake, they failed me. I'm talking to the Chicago public teachers who will go on Twitter and tweet anti-racist curriculum, but then go and say problematic stuff to young Black people. I'm talking to the educators, Black and white, who continue to understand our pain and our hurt and everything that is wrong with the system, and they understand, they get us. But
nothing is ever good enough.
In the face of the principal, in the face of the security guards who we're saying that they shouldn't have, or the SROs who we say that shouldn't be in schools, in the face of all of these power dynamics, they fall silent. I think though, one thing you said was, I feel like I'm underwater. And I think about my ancestors. If they were in that water, all they would have done is fight, right? That's the only option we have. And that fighting is not a superficial one. It is not one that say, oh, I am an ally with you, or I am for you, or reach out to me when you need this, but it's actively disrupting the system of white supremacy, of racialized capitalism, of gendered violence. When it shows up in your classroom, when it shows up from your boss, when it shows up from your fellow educator and colleague, when it shows up from a student upon another student, how are you forging those connections? How are you building with those young folk? I think that's
someone's going to clip that and be like, Carlin laughed at a Black man.
About anti-racist theory anymore or practice. We need folks to be implementing it. We need white teachers to sit down. We need the destruction to student dynamic.
Oh.
Let's talk about that. Y'all want to talk about?
Oh, holy shit. He just said a couple things that are important. He said, number one, we need people to stop talking about anti-racism and start implementing it. And number two, he said, we need to, what did he say? Destroy the student-teacher dynamic. Hang on, let me just rewind that one little bit real quick.
About anti-racist theory anymore or practice. We need folks to be implementing it. We need white teachers to sit down. We need the destruction of the teacher-student dynamic. Let's talk about that. Y'all want to talk about social justice? You can't talk about social justice if you ain't gonna talk about the power dynamic teachers have over students and principals have over teachers and all of that. So like social justice literally calls us into the work of reshaping ourselves. Abolition calls us into a continuous practice.
That's Paulo Freire. That's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. We need the destruction of the student-teacher relationship. That is straight Paulo Freire, man.
Of being in community and coalition with each other, of calling each other in. You can't do that when educators say, I'm an educator, and you are the student, and you sit down and they open the door to their brain and insert the knowledge, and you go home and you just leave. You can't do that. You ain't committed to social justice if you ain't trying to lecture your kids and you ain't trying to give students your power, flipping it on its head. Let students teach for a day. Let them create the curriculum that they want to see. The system is not ready for that.
You're not committed to social justice if you don't let your students teach you.
Educators are not ready for that.
Thank you. Stacey, how do you see these questions? And especially also if you can speak to the issue of the police, defunding the police.
So the issue of the police blew up for us over the summer. Because
and by the way, that is actually happening in a lot of schools. That's not theoretical. That is actually happening in schools.
That are in relationship with the police. They're related, they're married, they live in neighborhoods. Like those relationships are close. And a couple of things. One thing is that you hear Kayla provide that testimony and you are in a relationship with your student. So how can you do this? You can't. Part two of that is the type of teacher you want to be. Many of us are taught through popular culture movies where we fly into a situation and we change it with a composition book. Or we are taught in teacher ed programs to be a missionary and not a revolutionary, right? That's a different way of thinking about it. And we don't get that. And I'm a part of the we. I wanted to do a thing and couldn't figure out how to implement the thing, right? And there's no guide for you in there. There was no mentor to turn this whole revolutionary thing around for me for implementation. Last thing, we made a decision as leaders in this union to say we build power to use it. And we've also made a decision as leaders of this union to lead for the type of world we might not get to live in. And if that means your vote, then okay. Because we are a political space too. People get to vote for me. I will lose votes. And that's okay. That's okay. Because I am still a teacher and I'm gonna always be Black. That's it.
Thank you. Stacey, I'm gonna come right back to you. So we have a question about the idea of, how do folks around the country build the type of union that you all have? Not everybody has the leadership that you all have. Not everybody has this history that Chicago has. So what are some practical things you would say if you are not happy with your union's leadership, or you want your union to be more socially justice focused and have the social justice unionism? You want them to make connections with the community. You want them to call out the mayor. You want them to take these stances. How do people start to engage with unions to do that particular type of work when they don't feel like they have strong leaders?
Well, we didn't either. And I would posit that America is Chicago. They're dealing with racism, they're dealing with sexism, they're dealing with economic injustices, they're dealing with a system that is socialism for the rich. That is not unique to Chicago. That is American. And so you are having those struggles. You just haven't identified your tribe, your people in that. And so the best thing that I can say is what was already said. There are already people fighting in your community. Go ask a question and then bring your people with you. Like Jackson Potter, we was in a bar. It was 3 of us. And then we were at Karen's house. It was 8 of us. And then we were over in Pilsen and it was 15 of us. You see what I'm saying? We don't teach history well. I'm a history teacher and we don't teach it well. We don't talk about Dr. King being in the basement of the church and it was only 5 people. We talk about the March on Washington. We talk about the big demonstrations, but not the parts of the movement that only had 10 of us there. And
you know what? Hang on.
More commonplace than the huge demonstrations.
She's making a really good point right now. She's making a really good point in that organizing really effective movements, they don't often come with the big audiences. They don't often, you're not going to have the March on Washington every day. Most of the time it's going to be sitting around and people discount this stuff because, I hear from people all the time, I don't have a platform. I can't do anything. I don't have a platform. You don't need a platform. You need to start with a couple people sitting around a table or a couple people. We're going to have a Zoom call in about 7 minutes in my locals community in which we're going to have probably 20 to 30 people on the call for 5 hours. Maybe not 5 hours tonight, but it's the smaller groups that this stuff actually happens in. It's not the larger groups. The larger group comes after you do the work of the smaller groups. And I think a lot of people misunderstand that because they're obsessed with numbers and status and all of these things. But always remember that these people are not the majority. They're a very small minority, and yet they're still winning because they showed up to have those conversations with the 20 people, to have those conversations around the kitchen table, to go to the school board meeting where only a couple of them showed up, and it was them against everyone else. That's how things really change. And maybe that's the biggest thing that we need to take away from this session. And I know we don't have enough time right now to finish it, because I do have a Zoom call starting with my community in about 5 minutes. But I think there are a couple of really important things. So one of the things we learned from this is that the city of Chicago has fully implemented Paulo Freire in their curriculum. Like, there was Pedagogy of the Oppressed all over this presentation. And the most disturbing stuff came from the younger kid. Came from the younger guy who's been probably indoctrinated into this philosophy his entire life. And we've known this, by the way. This is not actually a surprise. The state of Illinois, like I said at the beginning, has some of the most woke teacher licensure guidelines of any state in the country. And so it is not at all surprising that that they would have fully implemented these social justice things into the curriculum. But the other important thing that we wanted, and maybe we'll do an event. Actually, you know what? I had started doing an investigation into the Chicago schools a while ago, just offline. Maybe we'll do a little school investigating Chicago tomorrow, and we'll see what comes up. But the other thing I really want to take away before we end for today is what she just said about, like, people are teaching Martin Luther King with the March on Washington. They're not teaching that time he spoke to the 20 people in the basement. How we start organizing to push back in a real way against the woke cultural revolution is in smaller groups. It's in neighborhood groups. It's in communities. Every single person watching right now, and every single person who will hopefully watch the replay of this in the future, can find a way to organize within your communities. You can find a way to organize with your neighbors. If you don't consider yourself an activist, fine. But an activist is not like a woke leftist. An activist is just a person that takes action that is meant to change things. I think that we all need to start considering ourselves to be activists. I consider myself to be an activist. I'm not a journalist. I occasionally perform acts of journalism to make up for the fact that real journalists don't want to do journalism anymore. But I don't consider myself a journalist. I don't consider myself a content creator. I don't consider myself an influencer. God forbid. I can't imagine anything more miserable than that. I consider myself to be an activist. I have a very distinct point of view. I have a very specific vision for what I want to attain. And I take action to try to create more people like me, to try to download everything in my brain to give it to you guys, like on a silver platter, so that we're all operating from the same page. And so we can all work together and coordinate and communicate with each other. That is my goal. Every single one of you can do the same thing. Not a single thing is stopping anyone from getting a group of parents together to watch a video, or to discuss an assignment, or to go to a school board meeting. Nothing is preventing anyone from doing that. You don't need a platform to do it. You don't need a YouTube channel to do it. I don't even have a Twitter account anymore, technically. I'm still doing it. There is no reason for anyone to opt out of this, to say, I can't do it. It's too hard. I don't want to. I have to mow the lawn. Stop making excuses, guys. Start with a couple people around your kitchen table. Come to my community Zoom. You can talk to other people there. If you don't know people in your neighborhood, then just connect with other like-minded people on the internet. You're all on the internet anyway. You made it this far into the video. You're on the internet anyway. If you believe that what the woke left is doing is wrong, then now is the time to take action against it. And if you are unwilling to do anything, then don't expect anything to change, and you will be one of the reasons why. I think we've got a really uphill battle in front of us. Really uphill. I don't know if we can win. I don't think we can win in my lifetime. I think anyone who says that the woke left is losing steam or losing power, I think they're deluding themselves. I think that they don't fully understand the problem, which is that they have captured the schools. They're indoctrinating the next generation, and have been for a really long time, and have really cranked it up in the last decade. This is not a problem that can be undone overnight. Anyone who tells you that the woke left is losing steam is a liar, or they're ignorant to the full breadth of the problem. Everyone has to get involved. If you aren't doing it, I don't know why you're on this channel in the first place, other than you hate watchers out there who are just obsessed with everything I say and do because you don't have lives of your own. But we're going to go do a Zoom in my locals now, guys, or actually for my Patreon supporters too. If you would like to join our community Zoom call, this is a supporter-only call. You can head over to activelyunwoke.com/support. And the best ways to do it is either become a supporting member in my Patreon or in my locals. One of those two options, Patreon or locals, will get you access to the Zoom call that I'm going to go start right now. So I will be posting a message to locals in like 2 minutes. I will be posting a message to Patreon supporters in like 2 minutes. We'll see you guys in Zoom. Have a great rest of your day. Mount that like button on your way out the door. By the way, Joshua and I are having Royal Night tomorrow. Joshua and I are going to do it in a whole episode and nothing remotely controversial about royalty and royal questions. It's going to be awesome. I might even try to go get a crown, like a legit crown, not the tiara crown, because, you know, we have a new king. God save the king. And so we're going to have Royal Night tomorrow. I might be back with a stream before then. But guys, we will see you soon. Have a great rest of your night, and thanks for hanging out. Bye.